Thank you. So this is my personal compost business journey in starting a small business, and we're about 3 years deep now, and I think there's a good story to tell here, even though we're just getting started. How this all started, I was involved with a local volunteering group called Cooperative Humboldt, and they put out a little flyer on their message board saying, hey, there's two guys who are trying to start a composting business, and they want to do it on bikes. And I knew nothing about composting or gardening or food waste at all, but I really like to ride bikes. Mountain biking is my passion. I travel all over doing that. And so I thought, all right, well, I've got a bike and some enthusiasm. I got something to contribute here, and thought I'd get involved. And now I'm the last person in that group who's still involved. But this is our starting group minus one guy who I give another picture of. We're in my buddy Rory's front yard. Me and Rory and Tobin were all neighbors on the same street. So we're like, yeah, this is going to be our neighborhood business. And there's just a fun kind of lightheartedness. Another neighbor gave us this trailer, and then Rory owned his own trailer. These bikes at work trailers, which are made in Idaho out of aluminum. And so we thought, okay, well, we've got a trailer, a few bikes, we all own our own bikes. I happen to have an e-bike, which was a plus, and we have a couple trailers. What else do we need? All right, well, we needed a site, and I'll get into that. But we thought, okay, basically we've got the basics. What's our first move in business? Anybody guess?
Find some food waste.
Throw a party. So we decided to drum up some buzz about us and have an opening event. So we did it at the town center, the Arcata Plaza. A local band came up and did some music for us for free, and it was pretty fun. We kind of had like a bike party type theme to it, and it was just a great way to get that initial inertia, because we started posting a lot of Facebook advertisements right in the beginning to get our first batch of customers. And so people would see those Facebook ads and go, oh, we've already heard of you in the newspaper or heard your name somewhere. It's not like they knew who we are or anything about us, but they just maybe have heard the name, Full Cycle Compost, and they go, oh, there's familiarity there. I'm slightly more inclined to click on your Facebook ad. So we found that the opening event was actually a great way to kind of kick things off. And there's me celebrating, and that's our official mascot, the banana. Banana peel, mind you, it's open. And that's the larger trailer that we got donated, and good times. So this is where we started. We said, okay, who are we going to serve? Because you draw your map too big and then you can't do it, and the worst thing is to make promises you can't keep. So we said we'd rather start small and just tell people, sorry, if you live over here, we're not going there, but maybe one day, rather than disappointing people, because Arcata is such a small town that if you disappoint anyone or you start to develop that bad reputation, you're going to fail as a business. It's just not going to happen, and you need those customers later on as you grow. So we said, okay, this is what we can do, and we know we can do these areas, and this is all relatively flat. There's some hills up in here, but elevation was really our biggest concern here. It's like, how much waste can we haul up a hill on a trailer? And going down, it's the same problem. Like, bicycle brakes are only so powerful, and we don't have brakes on our trailers. So those are some initial concerns going in. And then, of course, the biggest one is, where is it all going to go once we haul it? We partnered with Cooperative Humboldt. Already had ties to a community garden project that they had helped start through an organization called Centro del Pueblo, and they're basically kind of like trying to get immigrants involved in gardening as a way to kind of root down and have some community. And so every Saturday they get together in the community garden and they say, hey, you can have a little space in our community garden. And something we've been able to carry through that we started in this first site was, we don't pay rent, but you can have lots of fertilizer. And they're like, okay, yeah, that works. And so, a big part of this business has just been trying to eliminate any overhead cost. So, the bike trailers were donated. The first bike we got was also donated by a local bike shop. the site we don't pay rent on, just like really trying not have any overhead costs because there's not a lot of money to be made in this. So if you're paying monthly bills, you're going to be in the negative really quick when you're first starting out. But we just made sure we had good signage for everything. We just have a sawdust barrel. Then we have the active bin and the inactive bin, so that way one has time to cook while the other's filling up. And we kind of worked such a small scale that worked for us for a while. And then we just had some simple instructions. We don't put locks on our bins, but we do ask that people pay, and we found that it's not really a problem. And we say, okay, if it ever becomes a problem, we'll put locks on the bins, but thankfully we haven't had to do that. And then we thought, we're putting so much time into hauling and picking up the food waste. What if people could just bring it right to us? So we said, okay, let's try that out. And like I was just saying, people don't seem to abuse it. Most people who drop pay, and if 90% of them do, we're happy with that. And if people need to drop off some food scraps, like our main mission here isn't to make money; it's to support community composting and get the food scraps out of the landfill. So it's like, all right, whatever. Like the money's a more of a rear concern anyway. If people want to utilize this and they can't afford it, that's fine. Whatever. We kind of just decided that was going to be our mentality. And some interesting data. Today we find that about a fifth of our customers choose drop off. So people really like convenience. They want you to go to their house. And it's just the overwhelming majority is like, yeah, we don't care, it's half price. Come to our house. Come get it. But we gotta say, we spend 10 times the time hauling versus drop off. So even though we charge half price for drop off, we make like 4 times the profit on the drop-off program just because the amount of hours involved in running it is so much less that even charging half price, it's still a much more profitable enterprise. But the market has shown us that people just aren't really interested in that service, or we're failing to market it, one or the other, or both, more likely. This is Julian. He wasn't in the other picture, but he was one of our founding members on his tall bike there with his buckets full of produce as he goes around. And we were just like, yeah, this is us in our element right here with the Earth flag in the background. We're out here representing for sure. And the party was a pretty good time. Some lovely Arcata residents. You got this guy who's got a solar panel behind his e-bike. I'm just like, yeah, I've got some good fellows out here in the biking community. And that was another thing, there's just a good, strong, bicycle community in Arcata. And so that was kind of what helped to kind of give us some initial base. But they were like, oh, you're doing this on bikes. We think that's super cool. And then we had to get to establishing our second site. Because as we grow, we're like, man, this little plastic thing's filling up really fast. It's not cooking quick enough. We need more sites. What are we going to do? Luckily, getting newspaper coverage and stuff of us helped to kind of get our name out there. And I honestly can't remember if we were contacted or if we approached, but one way or another, we ended up making ties with the local land trust, the Jacoby Creek Land Trust, and they gave us a little space, and they just said, hey, help us maintain the place, for 40 hours a year, and you can be here. And I'm like, great, so another kind of thing. And there's a farm across the street here from this site, like a little garden, not totally a farm. And another thing where it's like, oh yeah, we'll give them fertilizer. So a theme has been every single place we build a compost site, somebody's growing food there. And so it's like there's no transportation issue with the fertilizer. It just goes straight to where it's being produced. So that was a real win. And I suppose 1 out of 6, 1 out of 5, and it's a guesstimate. But this has been a good site. Some problems we've had though with rats were significant. We had to take a break from the site actually. We decided to just stop using it for 6 months. We removed all the material, let the rat population go away, and then we came back to it with a much more fortified build. But I'll get into more about rats later. Let's see, what is this going to be? Oh, this is our site number 3. Little pano. So we turned a parking lot into a garden. That was all pavement. This is our pickup trailer. Full of food scraps. And we're throwing in these bins. These bins were designed by students in the 8th grade science class. I helped teach their science class, did a little lecture with the teacher. And we said, okay, these are what components of what make a compost bin great. help us design it. And we broke the class into 3 different groups, and the 3 groups kind of produced their own popsicle stick version of the compost bins, and then we picked the best of 3 and built it in real life. And we had a lumber company donate the wood, because a big part of this has been, we partner with a school and a land trust, these kind of organizations that are easily getting community support. So, the school was able to get all that free lumber, which saved us like over $1,000 in building materials. And it was fun teaching the class and, being a part of this project where we're turning parking lots into gardens. Like, that's kind of the urban dream, really. And, we didn't do so much to really help with that other than just build the compost bins. Credit goes to the school for actually doing all of the rest of the work. But still, it was a great thing to be a part of. And site number 3, we had built 3 bins now, our first time building wooden bins. And it just greatly expanded our capacity. Suddenly we could take on so many more customers, because we were finding that, we were reacting, where it's not like, oh, we should go out and expand our capacity expecting that people will eventually sign up for this service. People were signing up and then we're going, oh, we have nowhere to put this material, what are we going to do? And we're kind of just reacting as we go. And we still haven't even gotten to the point where we're building ahead of, sign-ups, because it's just like so hard to make all that construction happen and find these site partners quick enough. But that's site number 3, and that really got us to the point where we're like, okay, we're kind of at a sustainable point for a while. We can keep taking pickups, not worrying about expansion so much. Oh, come on now.
Did you integrate any kind of rat protection into that design?
We did, and that was part of what we talked about in the class was, the rats have to stay out of it, especially because this site was in a very restaurant-heavy area, and so the rats are already living there. So we're like, they're going to find it in a day, and they love the smell, and they love the heat, and it's a food source if they can get to it. So we used hardware cloth, just like a metal sheeting, and it has good aeration because there's lots of holes in it, because you've got to have aeration, but you can't let the rats in, so it's kind of the tricky balance. Because if we didn't care about aeration, it would just be like a sealed box. But yeah, we use hardware cloth underneath the inside, and just basically the entire inside of the framing has hardware cloth in every crevice of it. And we find they still chew through that. So on the next build we're going to try and triple layer it. And we ended up digging all of these bins and removing them from their site, removing the first foot of earth and then replacing it with gravel as a retrofit. And because the rats were tunneling underneath, and we called them rat Hiltons. The rats are in the Hilton again. They're hanging out. It's all warm down there. They're getting out of the rain. It's like, smells so good, and oh boy. So, they're trying to stop them from tunneling with the gravel, but they still tunnel through the gravel, even though you can hear the little claw marks, and they're not stoked on it. But yeah, we'll see little burrow points underneath the bins. It's just a constant war. But we've gotten to the point where they're not eating the food in the bins. They cannot get to it now. So we're like, well, I'm sorry, to our site partners, that's the best we can do is keep them from eating it. The fact that they're attracted to it, there's really nothing we can do to completely mitigate that smell and that heat factor. So we just got to a point where we're like, well, this is just the place we're in. We're in an urban area with a lot of restaurants, and you can only do so good. So if they're not eating it, we can, if they can't get to it with their mouths, at this point we just consider that a win. Now let's see if this slide will turn.
Have you thought about predators up the food chain?
Mhm.
So owl boxes sometimes can be effective right there at the site if you can get an owl to move them.
That would be great.
You don't have a rat problem anymore.
Yeah, and
Okay.
perches for raptors in general, because they don't want, most of them don't want to sit on the ground. So there's something for them to land on, even if it's not a tree, if it's just posts and things like that can be helpful too.
Good tips. Okay.
Mongoose, a pet mongoose.
Okay. We hope there are more neighborhood cats in the area.
Yeah, neighborhood cats.
Really big snakes.
It'll be like Hawaii all over again. And that was one reason we're so excited to get this fourth site, which was we partnered with City of Arcata. They spent like $60,000 roughly on these 2 earth tubs and this little overhang for it. And right before the pandemic, this is a pandemic-born business, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do event composting. We're gonna make all our events zero waste. It's gonna be great. And then the pandemic hits. There are no events. So these sat here for 2 years unutilized, and then we just kept bugging them. It was a moment of tenacity. We're just like, hey, what about that unused equipment you've got sitting around? You're just like wasting all that money not using that equipment. We just kept bugging them. And eventually they're like, okay, fine, you can use the earth tubs. And they're like, but you gotta get insurance. And we're like, oh, that's it? Great. And we're probably gonna have to do that eventually anyway. So we view this as our only site that we quote pay rent at, but we're paying insurance only. So we're pretty happy with that. And we give a large portion of this to the farm that's on site. And another good point about it is it's whatever, lost that one, but it's so labor saving. It's amazing because we're spending, a big part of our business as we scale. We're hitting our 4th site. We're starting to be able to take on more customers because we have more processing capacity. But a huge hurdle was, we're doing the math and we track all of our time in categories and we go, okay, what are we spending our time on? All right, pickups, a little bit of marketing, this and that. But we're really spending a lot of time turning, shoveling, just mixing the compost. So much time mixing compost. And our income's fixed because we go, okay, most people are paying us for pickups. So we make, say it's $20,000 a year. How are we going to divide that by 5 people, and we spend, maybe 4,000 hours in a year just doing our thing. Okay, so if we spend half of that turning compost, I'm just making up numbers, but it proves the point that okay, our hourly wage was hitting, these are actual numbers, about $9 an hour. And we go, how do we fix that? Well, we need to spend less time turning compost. So much time turning compost. So the earth tubs allowed us to, has a giant auger in it, and I'll show you a video of that in a moment, that allows you to just upwell it all and mix it. And so, cutting the time into like a fourth. So that was really helpful. And these 2 earth tubs process more compost faster than like 6 of those wooden bins. It's just amazing what these can do. And here's a fun little video of what the auger looks like. There's a farm in the background.
Does that have aeration?
It has an air system that shoots in and then a suction valve out. But we find the compost gets so heavy that it blocks the aeration entirely. So it should, but it doesn't. It was designed to, but the design is just not.
That auger, is it just in one place or even?
So you can grab the side of the earth that has these handles. It's got 3 of them because it gets pretty heavy. And a mule style, you push it around in a circle, and then the auger can go back or forth. So you can push the auger to any point in the compost. We'll put it in the far out position. We'll spin it all the way around. We'll kind of put it in the middle position, go all the way around, put it far inside, go all the way around, and that kind of basically hits every single point in the bin in like 20 minutes. Versus like, if you flip that entire thing, that's like 4 people's labor in an hour and a half. So
What
it's
does
just
the bins alone cost?
I have no idea what these bins cost.
They cost unobtainable. They stopped making them and they went out of business.
They make a shipping container size, as far as I'm aware, that
It's a different.
is $70,000 for a shipping container worth of volume. I believe that's a 40-foot container.
That's Green Mountain Technologies.
Mhm. Are they out of business?
Well, I mean, I know that earth tubs are not being made.
They don't sell earth tubs anymore, but I believe they sell earth tub 2.0, which is the shipping container size version of it.
Yeah,
And they
also-
market those to whole cities.
Aerated static pile gets you the same volume input with the same time of labor because it's being aerated passively constantly all the time.
The aerating static piles are good
Yeah,
for the
and
labor
then you
saving.
also don't turn those.
That's a good strategy.
And if you
for sure.
cover it with a Gore-Tex cover in a rainy place like the North Coast so that you can control your moistures better, you actually do get better, faster efficiency in making the compost because of the aeration, how much air can leave. Means that the aeration coming to the bottom is
Stays.
circulated
Okay.
inside if you cover it with Gore-Tex cover.
We ought to try that sometime.
Was the one point that you were gonna make is that this is in vessel, so maybe there's less rats at the site?
Yeah, that was part of it. That wasn't the specific one, but indeed, it's so nice that we don't have the rat concerns because it's in vessel. That's been huge because that's like this ongoing war at every other site.
And isn't in-vessel exempted, right, from the volume? I'm pretty sure in-vessel is exempted in.
I have no idea.
From
It's not
under-
exempted in our area, however, pretty much if you want to have, if you waste composting like in our area, it has to be in vessel, more or less. You cannot do it outdoors unless it is in the vessel, because the water quality board would never approve it, because stormwater runoff into critical salmon habitat is not.
So you can't do wooden bin composting?
Huh?
Can you do wooden bin composting?
3 bin system.
Because the
I mean,
rainwater
small
leaks.
scale, we can do whatever we want. I'm saying like if you wanted to be a permit tier
Ah,
facility.
I see.
I just had that conversation recently and they're like, you can do it indoors or you can do it in vessel outdoors, but otherwise like, pretty much,
Even with a stormwater management permit?
yep,
Mm.
yeah. Butte County is, stringent. Wow. On food waste composting.
Well, this is me and my quest to further find ways to cut down on turning time. So I thought, oh, the auger's a cool concept. So we bought a power planter, which is just something that you're supposed to drill holes in the ground and put seeds and starts in. And we hooked it up to a concrete drill and a solar generator. And you know, in theory, it's great because you can just bore holes in the compost pile, allows the air to go in. But it didn't really move and mix it in a way that was effective. It was just boring holes in, which is like cool and all, but ended up being something we didn't continue doing. Partly because there's no power source at any of our sites, and so I'm lugging around this 70-pound brick of a solar generator every time I want to do this. It just wasn't practical. But you know, it was just like the lesson of, you know, I don't regret trying that because it's like you got to try to innovate. You know, you recognize, okay, this turning is killing our business. We could really make a lot more per hour if we didn't spend so much time turning. How do we figure that out? You know, so it's just this business has been a constant process of try something new. It doesn't work. Try something else, and that applies to hauling, turning, rats, all of it. But it was fun, and here is something that I think captures just how much fun that was. Just goes everywhere. I think if you could see, that's a bio bag. No. Okay, that's a bio bag. Those corn-based compostable bags. It's just like wow. Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of those bio bags and I'm at the co-op shopping for groceries and they're like, we have compostable bags, and like that's the image that comes to my mind when I think of compostable bags. Come on now.
You look pretty serious there.
Well, that concrete drill will break your wrist if you're not paying attention. You know, money's a big topic, obviously, and we are a cooperative-owned business, so we're all worker owners. So, like, you know, I was just talking about the co-op grocery store. You go there, you become a member, you get, like, you know, a small dividend if they make any profits. But that's a consumer co-op. So it's, in a sense, it has owners and then there are consumers who are members. We're a worker-owned co-op, so everybody who works there owns it in an equal part. So by definition, you cannot work there without being an equal owner. And this helps us financially a lot because we don't have to pay workers' compensation. We're not subject to minimum wage laws, which we can't pay anyway. You know, we're not subject to all the regulations around having employees. And we're taxed as an LLC. We pay like $800 a year just to be an LLC. And then we individually all pay 15% self-employment tax, which really hurts. But you know, if you get a job, the employer usually pays half of your employment tax, which is about 7%. So that's a noticeable hit, but it's better than trying to pay for workers' comp and all these other insurances that we never end up using anyway. And so we figured out, Lloyd.
I was just curious why you decided to go with an LLC instead of a partnership agreement.
That was mostly a conversation we're having with Tobin about Tobin helps start cooperatives for a living. He was working with us with Cooperation Humboldt, and we were just like, there's a lot of options, but frankly, it was just the one with the least paperwork. We just were like, how do we get this off the ground in the simplest legal format possible? And that was our answer. But honestly, don't know the answer to that question. It's not something we really explored much. He was just like, you could be a B Corp, you could be an LLC. I think there were partnership, I'm sure, was on the table, and I think we just didn't look into it too much, frankly.
It is a good entry level, though.
Okay.
It is like, I think you guys did it right. It's attainable, like easy to get in.
You're talking about partnership?
No, the LLC.
Yeah.
You can change your entity.
Yeah, and you can change it. It's like very.
Oh, okay. You
flexible.
can change it down the road.
And still be working.
Yeah, we found that to just be, like you're saying, an easy entry
Yeah.
point. We're just like, we're already doing this, so let's just kind of retroactively make it legal.
Yeah, down the road you can change it to whatever fits better.
Okay, good to know.
Would you explain the minimum wage thing? Why would that make you exempt from offering your worker employees?
Because if you're an owner of a company, you make whatever profits are left over. And so you don't technically even make wages. You just make patronage. So, if you're not an employee, you don't have to get minimum wage because you're an owner. So you're just getting whatever's left over in the business bank account after everything's been paid for. Does that answer your
Yes,
question?
and are you doing a balance statement on a monthly basis?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
But we don't even do we only earn 50% we only take home 50% of our estimated earnings each quarter, and then at the end of the year, then we do an actual, and then we take the rest of whatever's left at the end of the year
So
on
the
an
real
actual.
dividends are
So we don't really see any money until the end of the year.
And you're paid quarterly?
But we pay 50% of what we think we make quarterly. That way, because if we pay 100%, and then we, in quarter 2, and then in quarter 3 we go, hey, let's go buy a tractor, and we just spent all our, dividends on that tractor, well then that, account takes away from the actual earnings quite a bit, and then whoever got that money has to pay it back to the company. And we had a lot of years like this where we said, okay, we need to expand. We need a new site, so we need to buy some lumber, and we need another bike because the one is breaking. We need a backup so we can make pickups happen. Well, what are we going to do? If we buy both of these things, we're all going to earn like $4 an hour this year. What are we doing? But we just had to bite the bullet and to accept that this is not something that we're really going to make money at. It's going to be a passion project, and we're just doing it for the benefit of the local community. And we're going to have a lot of people doing this a little bit so that nobody gets burned out. And we're all just going to go get other jobs and just decide that we're just accepting that this is a passion project that buys us lunch sometimes. And we're going to continue to expand and grow, because if we don't expand and grow, we lose out on potential customers, because you don't want to say no to somebody who asks for your service, but you have to say no if you don't get more sites and more bikes. So it was really a tough balance, and that's a huge part of why this grant has been so helpful, is because we've been able to use grant funds to build new sites and get more hauling equipment, while also keeping the money we make to pay ourselves so we can have less turnover. An interesting part of how we share money is, this pretty much sums it up, right? You work 10% of the hours, you earn 10% of the profit. So it's a flexible system where some people can put in a lot of time, do a lot for the company, walk away with most of the money. And I think it's a great system with only one major caveat, and me being the only person who's been here still since the beginning, I'm seeing the detriment of this is there is no benefit to seniority here. So, in most companies you work longer, you get paid a little more. That does not apply. So, those first 2 years where I put in a lot of time and made zero money because everything we made we put back into the business, the only benefit from that I'm seeing is I still have a company that exists. But, I don't get any sort of you've been here a while, you earn a little more. None of that. So I think this is a great system, but I would love to somehow implement some sort of recognition of you've been putting in a lot of unpaid time in previous years. The only thing is we write into our bylaws that if the company ever absolves, all the founding members get 2% of the assets. But it's 2% is more just an ode than a significant thing. And this picture here, I use Toggle Tracker as an app to track all of my time. And so at the end of the year or each quarter we go, how do we spend our time? How can we be more efficient? And we finally this year, through a combination of the grant and a combination of time prioritizing, are making a living wage. So we finally got above minimum wage. And we go, how did we do that? Partly it's because we're not spending our own money to expand. It's been huge. But the other aspect of it is we've stopped doing basically anything that doesn't directly revenue. So things like tabling, there's a lot of activities that like are passive and we consider them marketing activities that we've just stopped. We've stopped paying for marketing entirely because we're pretty well known and we're limited to a small town. So we're like, okay, we're spinning our wheels after a couple years of marketing. Everybody knows about us. We've flyered every single door in town. Like everybody knows who we are. Let's stop spending time on things that don't directly equate to picking up or mixing or selling compost. So time prioritization plus grant funds have been game-changing for us to make a minimum wage. And another aspect that hurt us, we're really hoping to make more money selling compost, but we found that financially, 95% of our business, or 85% of it is, 80% of it is pickup service, like 10% of it is drop-off service, maybe 15% is drop-off service, and like 5% is compost sales. Like the vast majority is pickup, a little bit of drop-off, like I said earlier, about a fifth, and then we sell a teeny bit of compost, because the thing is, we want to get rewarded for, this is a handmade product that has been zero emission hauled, processed locally. It's super nitrogen rich. We cure it on the ground where the worms find it, so it's partially vermicompost. It's like, I throw it on my strawberries and potatoes and they just go insane. Like, it's a really high grade product, so we don't want to sell it, we don't want to undersell ourselves, but we find the rate we're asking for, nobody wants to pay. And so we're kind of at a conundrum where we're like, what are we doing here? We've been building these storage bins and just throwing it in storage and letting it cure longer. And people have told me the longer it cures, the better it gets. So we say, okay, we'll just store it, hang on to it for a while, and eventually maybe we'll come to a point where we'll know how to sell it better. But it's been a problem where we're spending money on storage when we'd rather just get rid of it. But like I said, we'll sell on our website, we sell at a minimum of 4 cubic feet because we realized there was a law that you have to sell, if you're unregistered, you're supposed to sell that amount, no less than that at a time. So we're like, okay, we'll do that. So we charge $60 for 4 cubic feet of premium sifted compost, and that's a lot of money. And that's 4 7-gallon buckets. It's not a whole lot. If you have a home garden and you're like a retired professor, that's our captured audience. But if you're farming, you're trying to make money growing vegetables, like this product is great for you, but you can't afford it. And so we don't know how to strike that balance yet between how to sell compost at a reasonable rate, but also, it takes us so much time and energy to make this product that we can't just give it away. So we don't really know what to do, so we're storing it. And we get occasional orders, and we do, we sell maybe 10 orders a year at that price. So it's like we're getting rid of 10% of what we make and storing the rest. Or we're probably giving away 50% and selling about 10 and keeping about 40. We do give a lot away, again, I mentioned like it's how we pay our rent. And it's also just like people just hit us up locally and they're like, hey, can we please have some compost? And we'll hardly ever say no just because supply and demand is such a problem for us. But this is something we have not solved.
Are you doing direct marketing, direct sales, or are you packaging and trying to put it on like a shelf?
Something that would help us a lot. We've considered doing California Department of Food and Agriculture labeling, which would allow us to sell in garden stores, and that would hugely boost our sales volumes. But it's just a project that no one at the team has really wanted to take up. And that's a big topic for us is like, somebody has to spearhead the project for it to happen. And if nobody in the group is particularly motivated to do it, and we're also swamped by our daily activities of just keeping up, then it's like, okay, nobody wants to take this on, even though we all recognize it's something we should do, but it's just like, well, who's gonna do it? Great. And another time sink is, we're in the art of decomposition. Things are degrading, right? We love it, but if you put some rotting mass in something made out of wood, you're gonna be spending a lot of time fixing things. And that's my job. I go around to all our sites, and figure out whatever's broken and fix it. And we use these struts here. This is just like how the trunk of your car works. We attach them to the lids, and it's so nice because you can open that heavy lid. It's just a lift of a finger. It's been a great thing. We've implemented it in all our sites, but they cause so many new problems that we didn't design the bins for. Like these 4x4s, they have only 2 screws originally holding them, and they start rotating because all the force over time just rips. And then like the way the 2x4 connects to the other one, that 2x4 starts coming out of the other one, and it's just like everything just starts pulling apart. And so here's me just kind of putting it back together for the 4th or 5th time. I've started since then using metal brackets in all the corners where everything meets, just so you're like, reinforcing it, just trying to make it nuke-proof essentially. So that's always fun, I'm just knee deep in my work here, having fun. It smells great in there. And this was actually the site we built at Fuente Nueva Charter School. Again, partnering with another school. So currently we're with Fuente Nueva Charter School, Redwood Coast Montessori School, Bayside Park Farm, which is a city-owned garden, and we were with Centro de Pueblo. So we're just trying to really hammer in, get with community organizations. Don't try and do these things solo, because having that community-backed support is so helpful. And yeah, this school, talking about hawks, I was thinking of this slide because we built this on concrete with a very open area around it, specifically with rats in mind. Thinking, okay, rats don't like to run for miles in open fields, especially on the pavement. That is grass, and so they hide pretty well in there. But the idea was hopefully some of the local birds would pick up some of the mice. We don't find any rats here, we find mice at this site, so that's interesting. But yeah, the grant helped us to build 2 of these sets of 3 bins. So we built a double. Typically we just make 1 3 bin. But we built 2 3 bins right next to each other with grant funding from this grant. And that was huge, because that would have been a year of making literally like $2 an hour if we would have built those on our own. This is like a $2,000 cost, but you throw that cost on top of our costs we already have, and it just pushes everything right over the edge. Yeah, that's the conversation. Are we gonna expand capacity this year, or are we gonna take home some money? I don't know. Probably the nice double rainbow that day looks. And we're just, we wrap these with this hardware cloth, and the new one we're building, we're starting a Laurel Tree School, where they want to do it too. And we're just all right, we're gonna do this times 3 or 4, see what happens.
So they're off the ground too.
And it's off the ground, but they climb up under through here. They chew through the metal. They don't chew through the 4x4, surprisingly. They choose to chew through the metal. And then they squeeze between these tightly spaced concrete pavers, and sometimes you'll hear them squealing, trying to get in. It's ridiculous. They just do not give up. Rats and mice are so tenacious. We wish we could just have a big open field with a tractor. That's the dream one day, is have a space where we just do windrow composting, and we eliminate all this rat nonsense and all this shoveling.
I do have a question. How often do you turn your piles in the bins?
In the bins? Once a week.
Okay. Because what I found, so I did that for the longest time, and one of my sites is it's on a farm technically, but the area on the farm is pretty much just a big industrial parking lot where we have our composting happening. And so there are mice abound. There are mice, and I have discovered that they absolutely, on a once a week turning schedule, move into my piles, but if I turn them twice a week, I don't get any mice at all. And I know, from a business perspective, that's extra labor, so I totally understand, but I have discovered that if I turn them twice a week instead of just once, I don't get mice.
For sure. More disturbances, and they definitely do go away.
Have you thought feeding it into a vermi system, setting those bins up as a vermicast system? Maybe some more management, but you're putting in the infrastructure and stuff, and I'm sure.
Inoculating those bins with worms.
Yeah, and then the decomposition would be much faster, no turning.
We find that, I mean, we're not using like red wigglers like the worms are supposed to use,
They
but
come.
we find that the local worms
Yeah.
always find
They
it
always
once
find
it cools off.
Yeah.
So it naturally becomes part of the process.
Yeah.
And lately I've been drilling holes in the lids to let a little more water in,
Mhm.
and I find the worms are now much more attracted to it,
Yeah.
for being a little wetter. But it's obviously more Lloyd's area of expertise, but we find that they find it. I'm not sure though how like the effectiveness of local worms compares to the ones you're supposed to use.
Yeah,
What do you think,
yeah.
Lloyd?
Most likely what you have are they, do they have any orange to them at all? Like, do they have any orange bits
I
on
they
their
have
tail?
that tan color, but not like distinctively orange, but they are rather lighter in skin tone.
So a lot of times what'll happen is you'll end up attracting composting worms, and usually they're the Ancena hortensis, the like little bit, they call them the European night crawlers. They tend to be the ones that find like manure piles and find compost piles, and they are the right worm.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times like the actual earthworms themselves don't. A lot of times they live in a different section of the soil. They're usually deeper burrowers.
Okay.
Whereas the ones you're going to find that are finding your material are the ones that tend to be the upper trophic layer living
Makes
worms
sense.
in that first 12 inches of the soil.
Hmm.
And they almost always can handle, you know, if they're in the pile, the chances are that they're composting worms, basically. They're not
I think
gonna,
so, right?
they're not
Yeah.
gonna be
Because they're
rebellious.
stoked.
or-
I mean,
you know,
we'll
they're
find
not
a
gonna
few,
be-
and then a month later, they're just like everywhere.
Yeah.
Sure.
They breed like crazy in there.
Yeah, once it's the
They
right
seem pretty
condition,
happy.
they're stoked. Yeah.
Janelle?
Just 4 more minutes.
Okay. So, you know, again, this is the trailer we got from Belgium. Nobody in the United States makes a design with a front wheel which offsets the load from your hitch. We find we're constantly blowing through hitches. You know, constantly going to the metal shop, hey, can you fix this? Because all that weight goes from here all the way to here. It's a lot of leverage. And it makes everything ride all weird. And we've had crashes from just like bad physics with the trailers. So, somebody in America, make one of these with a front wheel design, please. We'll buy it. We have to ship it from Belgium. This is Critical Mass. These are some of our other members that we used to have. And this is a big, fat Arcata bike party that happens every month. And it's a good time. And why not be a part of a community of bike nerds? It's a great time. I think that might have been the Halloween one. I don't know. That was pretty lit. As we were talking about, SB 1383, you know, we're like, is this going to hurt us or help us? I mean, it's going to generate a lot more customers because everybody now has to compost and they're going to either decide to pick ecology or they're going to pick us or they're going to pick Lloyd, the only 3 options in town. So probably going to have more customers we know what to do with. We imagine a lot of people will be value driven, but pay slightly more to have us do it instead of ecology. But, you know, we're like nervous because it could be, you know, I mean, we were especially nervous before we had that city lobbying experience where I went out and talked to my town hall and was like, hey, we really need carve outs, and our local city of Arcata made that happen for us, so we're stoked. But before that, we're like, we could be over as a business in a legal sense. We might just operate as rebels anyway, but, you know, that was a conversation we were having. I think that we're looking better now. You know, in the initial outset, we probably should have done this research. I did it retroactively, so I was just curious. But it turns out we got a lot of work to do because in Arcata, food waste was the highest percentage of the waste stream, accounting for 33% of waste in Arcata. So in theory, if we could take 33% of the waste and not put it in trash cans and not truck it to landfills and then not create methane in landfills, we could have, you know, we could emit, I mean, if you think about, right, a plastic fork in a landfill is not really going to create methane, it's not organic material. So if you get rid of all the organic material in the landfill, you could have, in theory, 100% reduction of methane in landfills just by eliminating 33% of your waste stream. And you're not spending all that fuel trucking it around because there's no landfill in Humboldt County. So our waste travels hundreds of miles, which, you know, it makes people's trash fees go up. So it's an easy argument to make to residents that, hey, we can lower your trash bill by having the service be local. You know, more of our members, currently me and Sky are still with it. But yeah, we have a lot of turnover just because we can't pay. You know, and only this year have we been able to pay more than $12 an hour. Now we're at 25, which is awesome. It's been a huge jump. But it's like, you know, on paper, our income has doubled every year, but our wages have stayed about $10, $12 an hour year after year until this grant came along. So that's huge. But it's sad we just can't pay people, and so they leave, and it's a bummer. But you know, we understand. You know, the big theme of like, who's gonna do it? We have so many good ideas that don't happen because people spearhead them. Nobody spearheads them. Somebody says, hey, this is a great idea, somebody else should take it on. And we've learned, like, if you have a good idea and you want it to happen, you need to do it. And so this is our Certified Organics Recyclers program. We were going around to businesses getting them ready for SB 1383, saying, if you do all the steps on this checklist, you will already be pre-qualified for SB 1383. And by the way, we happen to provide composting services which you need to complete this checklist. And you don't have to go to us for your composting services, but we happen to provide that. And so we did free consultations, and it was fun and cool, but it didn't lead to any customers. And you know, I just kind of ran out of motivation to like be contacting businesses all the time, trying to do this on top of my other duties. And nobody else wanted to do it, so it died. Even it wasn't even my idea. You know, somebody else pitched this, and I was like, I guess I'll take that up. But good ideas go nowhere if you're not willing to do them. You know, one tip I'd like to throw out to anybody trying to start a small business. I was initially intimidated by like, how am I going to do accounting, website design, you know, like intaking credit card payments. Like, all those services are super easy now that we have the internet, and you can just, you know, sign up for a subscription, and you just became an accountant overnight. You know, these services specifically, super useful. We pay about $400 a year in Squarespace fees, probably the most expensive of these services, but like, super worth it. Your brand should say a lot about who you are in a glance, right? So we're, you know, a bicycle, we always do everything on bikes. We've got the soil, you know, healthy soil, growing plants, blue skies, beautiful. And we've got the, you know, recycling arrows. So it's like, you know, and then our name, you know, and by the way, Carly created the name and the logo, shout out to her. It's been great. We love this as a brand, and you know, like I said, your brand should say everything about you at a glance, and I think this really does capture that. I'm almost done here. A little bit about promotions. You know, we've tried our proximity discount because it's a lot more efficient for us to pick up from a neighbor and then another neighbor. So we said, talk to your neighbors. If you and a neighbor sign up, you'll each get a better rate. People don't do this at all. I don't know why. I guess they just don't talk to their neighbors. People aren't interested in, I don't know. But you know, we try and give financial incentives for that. It doesn't happen. But we did free November, which is independent of, you know, you don't have to talk to anybody to do this. You just say, sign up in November, and you get a free month. And you can quit anytime. And we still have customers from that, and that was 2 years ago. And so that was hugely successful. We gained a ton of customers from free November. So it's interesting to see what promotions work and what don't. We still give away our gift certificates at raffles and things just for the fun of it, even though like it never generates new customers, seemingly. Is tabling worth it? You know, when every hour counts for your wage to profit ratio, you know, we spend 6 hours, you know, doing nothing that necessarily makes money other than just getting our name out there. Well, it's great, but we stopped doing it for the most part, except for certain very specific key events, just because we're trying to cut down on hours and it didn't seem to work very well. But, you know, it was fun to do, and I think in the beginning it was great as marketing, but now that it's like kind of established, it's not really a practice that makes sense anymore. So in my opinion, tabling is not really worth it, unless you're allowed to sell your product at the tabling, which we were not. There's me at another event doing my thing. And, you know, like I said, talking about turnover, if you can't pay people, they leave. It sucks, but it's just part of what it is. And, you know, rain in Humboldt County, oh man, you know, we're out here, I'm in my snowsuit, doing my thing. And, you know, it's this business has its challenges. Living where I live, there's a lot of hills and a lot of rain. But, you know, some days we use a van, and our customers overwhelmingly say, we don't care you're in a van, we just want you to come pick up our waste. It stinks, come get it. And so, you know, people don't care, and we do that every once in a while because sometimes the wind's blowing so hard it just throws the whole bike over. And you're like, all right, well, today's not the day. And lastly, this is where we're at now. So I showed you our service map in the beginning, which was just like Sunny Gray, and then it was downtown. We've gotten a little more specific, as you can see, because certain areas just haven't made sense for us. but kind of we're like, okay, you go on our website now. Basically, you scroll through here, and if you live in any of these zones, we'll come pick up. And each one's color coded, so this is Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Mondays, and Thursdays. So that's kind of how we started out. So that's where we started. This is where we are now. And personally, I feel like I'm just getting started on this, even though I'm year 3. Feels good. So
I
thank
have
you guys.
a question about the zones. Do you have all your sites in those separate zones?
Sure. We have the Bayside Park Farm site here, so Tuesday goes there. We have the Montessori Garden over here. We have the Fuente Garden here. So Mondays, this purple splits and drops off half here. It picks up over here. It drops off, then it goes over here, and then it drops off. Thursday route goes up and schlups over to here. Tuesday route obviously goes here, and then Wednesday route usually drops here. So having this that third site we got, the Montessori school, was so key because it was the first time we had a big site right in the middle of town that could kind of serve all of our different zones. And there's a big hill coming back up to get here. So coming back to Bayside, even though it has the most processing capacity, wasn't really a great option because you have to lug your 250-pound trailer up the hill. Now, mind you, we're on a 70-pound rad bike with a 50-pound trailer, and we're on average hauling 250 pounds of food scraps per route. So, each week we do 1,000 pounds of food waste. And it's like, okay, you're on some disc brakes with, you're pushing like 400 to 500 pounds. You got a 125-pound rider, and it's like, on a good day, it's a lot of weight to be schlepping around. So, distance is huge. How far you're hauling and how often you can dump and then keep going on a route is big.